All right, let's begin the Bucksport planning meeting for Tuesday, May 1st. Number one on the agenda, the roll call. Mr. Hammond.
Stephen Bishop.
Here.
Ron McDonald's absent. David Grant is absent. Steve Fite.
Present.
Edward Belcher.
Present.
George Hansen. Here. Jay DuRoss.
Here.
Yes. DuRoss, that is correct.
Item 2, review and acceptance of the minutes of the April 3rd meeting for those who were present.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay.
No spelling errors noted. Punctuation.
And, item number 3, the chair's report. He's not here, so nothing. He usually doesn't have much. So number 4.
Did we vote on the minutes?
What's that?
Did we vote on the minutes? Did I miss
We
it?
did not.
Oh, we did not. I thought we did. Okay. All right. Vote on the minutes. All vote to approve. Approve. Oh, you weren't here.
I will abstain because
Okay, that's a good idea. All right, so
agree.
minutes approved. Chair's report, he's not here. Code enforcement officer's report, anything, Jeff?
I just want to welcome the 2 new members tonight. We have Stephen Bishop and Jay DuRoss, who will be on the board for a few years. And just to let them know, as well as everybody who may not know, these meetings are recorded, just audio recording right at this point in time, but sometime in the near future we'll be doing video recordings that will be broadcast on the cable channel and streamed on the internet live, as well as recorded.
Wow.
That's in the works. We do that now with the town council, but we're also planning to do it for committee meetings as well as board meetings.
Does that mean we have to wear a tie in the future?
No? And that's all I have.
Okay. Item number 5, a limited public forum, which is an opportunity for the public to address the board on matters related to land use or planning in the town of Bucksport. Anyone have anything they'd like to share? No. Item number 6, unfinished business, is listed here as none. On to item number 7, new business. Application for approval of a site plan for a lobster processing facility on Heritage Park Road, tax map 3, lot 54-4.
I have a brief presentation to give to the board, but first I'd like to make certain, is somebody here to represent the applicant?
We're here, but Jim Kaiser is the one who prepared the application. I'm Charles Early from Lewis and Mom Architecture. We're working with Nickerson & Gay on the architectural design.
So you're not here to represent the applicant, though?
I wasn't asked to be here. We just came out of interest. If you have questions, we can relay them to, but Jim Kaiser is actually hired by the owner.
Yeah. I was expecting him to be here. In fact, he needs to be here. Somebody needs to be here to represent the applicant.
Represent the application, yeah, kind of.
Well, then I think I'll represent the application in that regard. So if there's any issues that we can relay them through our, like I said,
Okay. I'll try to call him.
he might be on his way to Stonington, so I don't know.
I have his number.
All right.
Yeah, we're good.
Covered with us being.
Guess you should fire Kaiser for not being here. Said you should fire Kaiser for not being here to
So
represent.
this application is for approval of a site plan and development on the Heritage Park Road. It's classified as a manufacturing facility, and I've highlighted on our table of land uses. That's a recognized land use. The property is in the C3 district. And in that column, you can see that a new manufacturing facility requires level 2 review, which is planning board review, and that's why we're here tonight to talk about this application. This is just a picture from our official zoning map that shows, in fact, the property is in the C3 district. You can hardly make it out there, but it says C3 right there. This is the industrial park, the entire industrial park. Has its own zoning classification, and this is the lot we're talking about right here. I've got a little better picture to show you from our tax map. So this is phase 1 of Buckstown Heritage Park. Most of these lots are developed, except for this one here. And this is phase 2 here. These 8 lots here are for proposed developments, and we have one already that you have reviewed and approved in this lot here, which was
Muscle Park.
Tennecook Mussel Farm. And this is the one we're talking about tonight, right across the street. This satellite image is a little dated. It gives you a rough idea. Actually, it doesn't even show the road extension, but it goes up into here. This is the phase 1 development here. And the lot, again, we're talking about is up in this corner, roughly here. But you can see that most of the...
No, I don't think it goes much farther beyond what was originally that.
Well, yeah, the point is, it's up in this area here. Yeah. Exactly where it isn't shown on this map. And these are some street views to show you. Hard to see with the light, but this is a view of the extension of Heritage Park Road looking back towards phase 1. As you can see, the poles are now installed. We have water and sewer in the street. Everything's good to go. And this is just a simple shot of the lot we're talking about tonight. You see there's a hydrant there that is installed in the water system. And
That's a turnaround just to the right.
Turnaround's right here, yeah. And another section over here. It's a T-shaped turnaround.
So the hydrant's the end of the water main,
Yes.
basically.
And I want to point out an error that was made in the fee for your review tonight. The actual fee that was required for this review was $1,150. The applicant paid $2,500. That was the number that was given to them by their engineer, who miscalculated the amount. So what I've done is broken down what additional fees that Green Canada will be paying as they apply for their other permits. Based on this size structure, the building permit fee will be $816.65. The entrance permit fee will be $20, sewer permit $15, and based on the number of fixtures they're telling me now, the plumbing permit will be $280. So for a total fee of $2,281.65, which means that they'll be getting a refund of $218.35 if these figures remain accurate.
Maybe a copy of that, John?
Always getting a bonus.
Now, water entrance fees are separate.
There's no permit required for a water service line.
Well, it's not owned by the town.
Right, so the town does not have permit requirements for water service.
No, but
Whatever fees are required for the water installation are between the property owner and Maine Water. The application was sent out to department directors for their comments. I heard back from almost every department director, and there were no issues raised about this project. I did not hear in writing from the superintendent of the sewer department, but I did have a discussion with him today, and he is in discussion right now with the applicant, or the engineer, I believe, about the quality of the wastewater. He wants to be certain that the wastewater BODs, pH, and ammonia levels are within appropriate range. And that hasn't been clearly determined yet, but is in the works. And I also sent out abutter notices to all the surrounding property owners. I did not receive any comments or questions from any abutters. Any questions?
Is there a reason why they chose that last lot in? That's the new section that just got built.
Maybe Rich can answer that.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Is there a reason why they chose that lot, the last lot in on the left? That's the new section of the industrial park. I'm just curious as to.
Both parties chose the last two lots because the water runs downhill. There's going to be serious runoff issues with the other 6 lots, which we'll have to deal with at the time. Also, they were the smallest for square footage for DEP before they had to do any permitting, so they didn't want to deal with extra DEP permitting, so they chose the lots with the less amount.
Okay. Thank you.
I also want to just, for the benefit of the 2 new members, in your packet you received a Level 2 review documentation form. I hope you all have your copies with you this evening, because you're going to use that to actually review the application. And it's a checklist. You go down through the checklist. The first one is the CEO conducts the introductory presentation. That's been done. And then the applicant has an opportunity to comment on the application as well next. And then you take general questions, or you ask general questions if you have any. And then you ask for public comment. And once you've done that, you actually begin your application review. And again, you go down through each group of standards and determine which, if any, of the specific items in the group of standards is applicable to the application. And then you document how the applicant has met that standard with their application material. And once you've gone through all of that, then you go back and do a findings, which is where you make your actual determination if they've met all the applicable standards or not. So that's how the application review is conducted. Any questions about that?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm done.
Number 2, does the applicant want to give an introductory presentation of the project?
In terms of, we represent the building
Right.
part of it, and the only comment that we would like to make is it's a design-build project with Nickerson O'Day as the general contractor. The owner hired Nickerson O'Day to do that, and Nickerson O'Day hired Lewis and Malm Architecture of Bucksport to do the architectural design. When we were working up the drawings on the square footage, the actual square footage will be slightly smaller than what is recorded. We want to remain under 15,500 square feet because we don't have a sprinkler, because we stay under 15,500 for an F1 factory industrial use. And so I just want to, that'd be nice to have on the record that you understand that there'll be adjustments to the smaller portion of the building. The factory itself is a pretty big building with about 12,000 square feet. And then the office and administration wing is sort of an L that wraps around it. It's a single story, call it a lean-to type construction. And we've got some ability to reduce that building size by the necessary area to get it down. My actual numbers were 15,488.
Yeah, it says 15,555 here, so that's going to be lower than 15.5.
It's going to be under 15.5.
Okay.
We'll make sure that happens during the design development. It was just the difference of how we measured the footprint versus how we measured. In terms of, will that thing, is that an overhead projector?
It is. And it's good if you make comments at the podium, then it becomes part of the public record if you wouldn't mind.
I brought images of that, how that works. There he is.
Sorry.
How do we put this face down?
Face down. Switch to the lower right-hand side.
The owner of Greenhead Lobster has joined us. This is Hugh.
Hi there.
Hello.
Sorry, I'm late. Yeah.
So do you have was there a pointer I saw? Is that your pointer? Great, thank you. But, how do I turn it on? Push that button? Yep. Okay. The road is out here. The access road and the turnaround is up here. We're avoiding the turnaround in terms of the parking you saw in Civil. But just to understand the building, this is the pre-engineered building of 12,000 square feet, out to out. And this is the admin and support building that's sort of a lean-to onto that structure. So we're going to adjust this slightly to keep it under 1,500, 500 square feet, under 15,500. So they're bringing in the live lobster here, they're putting them in the cooler, and then they start getting split into two. They go into here. In this area, they get terminated, and then they get broken down into raw tails and claws and knuckles. So the tails go this way and go back into freezer and then back out that to this same loading dock area. And the claws get cooked, and then they get cooled down, and then they get broken up into claws and knuckles and body treatment. And then they go into this cooler or over here if they're frozen through the loading dock area. So it's very compact as far as the way that works. One thing that's really important about this project is that there's a raw group of staff and a cooked group of staff, and they're not allowed to commingle because of the nature of what they're doing. So the cook staff everybody comes in the morning and goes through here with their card reader control. They go in through their locker rooms into a break room where they have their toilets, and they go through hand and boot wash, and they come out in their work area. And they can't see each other, they can't work with each other, they don't commingle, they don't mix. And the raw folks are over here, and they're doing the same thing, and they're coming out through here into that area. And then the rest of this is just regular admin area. Another interesting point on this project is that if we talk to the state fire marshal, and if we keep this area under 10% of the whole, then there's no construction barrier-free permit requirement. They don't review the project. That's not to say that Lewis and Mom and all the engineers that are working on the project, of course, work according to code and in terms of ADA compliance and all the other energy codes and all that sort of thing. But the actual permit that we normally would have to get for a project, the fire marshal doesn't review them as long as that area is under 10%, which it is. So, I don't know if is there something else that you would like to say about the project?
No, I'm just saying you're doing a good job so far, Charlie.
So I'll switch over. That's just how the building works. I'll put this one up really quick. It's going to be sideways for you gentlemen. These are the elevations. It's a one-story building, about 14 feet. Refrigerated buildings need to be lifted about 52 inches.
You turn that a little,
Yes. I'm not new to this technology. Is it the right way? No? Oh. Jim, there's Jim.
All right.
So Jim can present the site.
Beautiful.
We're raising the building 52 inches so that our loading dock height is our 0-0. There's other sites, other projects in the park that have done the same thing. But this is the pre-engineered building, and that's the lean-to. So Jim Kaiser has joined us, and we'll let him represent his work. Do you have a copy of it?
Yep. That's good. Thanks, Charlie.
Leave those dynamos.
Yes, yeah, boy, this is right.
Oh, yeah.
It's quite an extreme.
Perfect.
Evening, my name is Jim Kaiser. I apologize for being late. I had it at 7 o'clock, not 6:30. So, you already got an overview of the building itself. We're here to basically present and hopefully get approval for Greenhead Holdings LLC to construct about a 15,000 square foot processing facility to process live and process cooked and uncooked lobster meats. We've got the site, basically, it's the last lot on the left in the business park, or the commerce park. And we're going to come in just before the Hammerhead turnaround with parking facility. The building will be in front of that. We have about 39 spaces, I believe, on the plan. The building will have access an employee access at this location, general public access for any visitors or anything coming in this location. We're going to have loading docks, two-bay loading dock area, which will access right on to Heritage Park Drive also. And then we have a side area access on the side of the building that will provide for waste removal. Waste will be collected in here. This will be the processing waste, which would be the shells. And then general waste for the operations will be in a dumpster location over on this portion of the site. We've got it graded so that primarily all the stormwater follows the existing drainage patterns. We'll have a little bit of water coming out towards the road and in the ditch for Heritage Park Road. And then the remainder of it will sheet flow and channel flow off to the back on both sides. We've got it set up for drainage so that this is, 8/10 of an acre of impervious surface. So the next expansion of the project would then create something that we would need a DEP stormwater permit. So we've graded this site so that at that point in time we can collect all the water and address DEP requirements on that for treating and controlling the runoff, which would probably end up happening either down in this area or maybe even in the back. There'd be room right in the back here for a collection and two sites out front that would be served as controlling stormwater on the next phase. We are going to put some drip edge collections for roof runoff so that we don't have to go back in and alter that later on. Put it in now and address that in the current situation. So we will be providing some treatment of runoff in this early stage, mostly all roof runoff. We have propane tanks on the front side of the building. We're going to put a fence around that, or at least two-sided fence to protect visuals on it. And then we're going to have a fence on the back side here to protect some visuals on the waste products on the side of the building. We've got it protected for erosion control around the facility in the key locations. And we're going to have two different pavement patterns, one for the parking and one for the heavier truck traffic. We did present a waste plan that will utilize, try to keep the waste odors down by removing the product from the site every day. Farming Cooperative has expressed an interest in it for using it as fertilizer. And so we expect that if we don't have somebody show up for that day, the intent is to, as it's spelled out in the plan, is to move the product inside in the cold storage for the evening hours, so it's not staying outside during the evening hours. We're lighting the parking lot, and we have several area lights on the building for entrances. That will just be downcasting lights to just shine on the areas that are intended to light. I think that pretty much covers what we've got on site. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that the board has as you review this.
You have just one pole light?
We're having one pole light right now. Might need another one depending on photometrics. We're still working on that process. If we do, we'll just split the distance on it and put it up on that. We are proposing to have overhead onto those poles, so they'll be just traditional power poles that will hang lights on.
I know there are a couple things in your sections for paving, just graphically in what you've written out, don't seem to jibe.
The graphic's not to scale, so you can't go by the scaling on that.
So your surface is going to be thicker than your base, and the asphalt?
Unless I got them transposed, they shouldn't be. I have them been transposed, yes. The thicker one would be the base material, yeah.
I like it when we get a complete, nice, clean plan.
So helpful.
Thank you.
Was your question answer that? I have one when it's my turn. You also have your turn? I have you with the gentleman from the architecture firm. When you gave your presentation, you said keeping it under so many square footage does not require a sprinkler system.
Right.
Okay.
It is useful.
What again was that figure, sir?
15,500 square feet
Okay.
is what we should stay under.
Okay. I'm newer to the planning board, but the fire service I'm running into, I've been in it a long time on the call department here in town. Did you do some investigation to find out what it would cost to sprinkle this? I understand from the inside of this building, there's not going to be an awful lot of fire load inside this building to begin with.
Cold building, that's right.
Cold building, yes. Did you look into a sprinkler system, what it would cost to sprinkle it?
Nickerson O'Day would be responsible for that. They're the general contractor. I can tell you from experience, it's going to range between $2.50 to $3.50 a square foot to do it. It's not really a practical thing in a cold building to run sprinklers because of the temperatures. So if you did that, it'd be a dry system if you wanted to sprinkler it. But in this phase, it's not foreseen to sprinkler it for economic reasons. So of course, we would have to have the fire extinguishers and fire alarm and smoke alarm, smoke detectors and all that. There wouldn't be any full stations. We would take the option of the fire extinguishers and the fire alarm system. It's optional what you do. And because you have a limited population in the building. But,
Good, you have answered my question. Thank you very much.
And that was also my question.
Ask it if you wish.
Propane tanks, are they buried?
Excuse me?
The propane tanks, are they going to be
No, they're going to
buried?
be above ground. The problem is when you bury them, they, especially in the wintertime, when you get high usage, they tend to freeze up. You'd think they'd be a little bit better, but what happens is the environment around them freezes up and they get poorer utilization than when they're above ground.
Any other comments from the applicants? Anything else you guys wanted to say? Any more questions from the board? Then part 4 of our level 2 review documentation is any comments by the public. If anyone would like to come up to the podium and make comments, they're welcome to do so now. Jim Morrison.
My question is, what amount of refuse are you prepared to handle at this point? And is that going to change? And when it leaves the facility, where does it go to? who exactly is going to take it, and what route are they in, and how are they going to transport it? And could you kind of expound on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, usually it's hauled by like a gondola dump truck, and there's a couple compost companies that are going to probably take it in Maine. The only thing that we're throwing away is the back shell of the lobster. So, and then the cooked shells, all of those. We have the back shell and the cooked claws and arm shells, so it's about, we do 20,000 pounds of lobster a day. It'll be about 2,000 pounds of waste.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yep. But I definitely plan on moving it daily. We're also, it's very inexpensive to also compact it. So, actually can get quite small compact it.
Thank you.
Yep. And who knows, maybe even the salmon company salmon will eat it.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
Eventually, we'd like to do something better than compost. That's the long plan, is to extract the chitin and get some value out of it. But we don't have an immediate plan for that.
Any other public comments?
Welcome to Bucksport.
Yeah. All right, with no other public comments, now the board conducts their application review where we go through the actual level 2 review documentation, and we begin with environmental standards. Standard number 1, are the soils suitable for the land use? I cannot see why not.
Oh, yeah.
Number 2, stormwater runoff from the land use is minimized to the greatest practical extent and adequately managed to reduce the risk of relevant detrimental effects. I believe one of the gentlemen already explained that they're using the existing swales and the stormwater plan. So I believe that is taken care of, unless someone else has something. 3, soil that may be exposed during any soil disturbance activity of the land use is adequately protected from unreasonable erosion and sedimentation. I assume you'll be using standard.
Yeah, we have silk fence around the site and also some check dams in the areas where it's going to be concentrated a little bit more, especially where they're man-made channelizations.
Perfect.
DEP best practices.
Best practices, yes. Anything else, anyone on 3? 4, surface and subsurface waters are adequately protected from the detrimental effects of any water pollutant from the land use.
You might find this one to be not applicable.
Not applicable.
Yeah, we don't really have anything on site that is hazardous.
Okay.
As
long as the rubber bands are on. Okay. Number 5, the ambient air environment is adequately protected from detrimental effects of any air pollutant from land use. I assume that's not applicable as well. 6, significant wildlife habitat and other important habitat is as identified in the Bucksport Comprehensive Plan as adapted or adequately protected from any relevant detrimental effect of the land use.
There's no habitat identified in this area.
I can't imagine that. So not applicable.
Significant habitat, I should say.
Okay. 7, vegetation with any applicable shoreline district is protected from excessive cutting or removal. It's not in the shoreline district, so that's not applicable. Site documentation to verify compliance with any environment objective.
I don't need one.
I don't need one. Anyone in the site visit? Not needed. None. And special conditions to ensure compliance with any environment. I can't see that there would be any for that. The plan is so well written out. And we do the finding when we come back to it. All right. Special area standards, special areas objectives that must be met, except as noted. Areas of prehistorical and historical importance are adequately protected from any relevant detrimental effect of land use. I cannot see how that is applicable. Vistas of scenic value are adequately protected from any relevant detrimental effect of land use. I can't see how that's applicable. Butch Osborne would be upset. 3 areas of public access to water bodies, wetlands, and areas developed with commercial fisheries and maritime activities are adequately protected from any relevant detrimental effect of the land use. Not applicable. Areas of flood hazard are adequately protected from any detrimental effect of the land use.
Property's not in the flood zone.
5 areas with unique natural character identified in the Bucksport Comprehensive Plan as adapted or adequately protected from any relevant detrimental effect of land use. Seems not applicable. Any interest in a site documentation? They're all not applicable, so I can't see how that would be necessary. Special conditions to ensure compliance. Yeah, everything's not applicable in that. Local areas standard. Local areas objective that must be met. The scale and site features of the land use are consistent with the development patterns in the location of the neighborhood. I would believe, yes, it's in the perfect location. 2, land use is appropriately separated and shielded from abutting land uses in public or private ways to adequately mitigate any relevant detrimental effect. The abutters all received notices. We received no comments.
Well, the abutting lots aren't developed yet.
There will be, I think, some vegetated buffer along the perimeter.
We're trying to leave, perimeter buffer, and then the back will be left. They're low-growth trees, so it's not as if it's a mature stand. It was harvested before it was developed by the town, so we'll leave some of the saplings that are there from that standpoint.
Just let them mature. Okay. Any relevant detrimental effects of electromagnetic fields from land use are adequately mitigated. I don't think any are present. That's probably not applicable. 4, any relevant detrimental effects of artificial lighting from the land use adequately mitigated. Just 1 light, I believe.
We have 1. The loading dock is lit up too.
There's 5 lights on.
They're all downcasted, and so they'll be contained within the site.
There's no plan to put a light on the pole, utility pole?
Yeah.
On the street?
No, not in the street, just on the site. We're just going to put them.
Yeah, just that one in the parking lot, I think?
Yeah.
Or 2.
Right. 5, any relevant detrimental effects of noise from the land use are adequately mitigated. Let's see. This would produce much noise.
Probably gas by location, I would say.
Be just the HVAC equipment, really.
Number 6, any relevant detrimental effects of nuisance odors from the land use are adequately mitigated. Someone mentioned about bringing waste inside when it's not picked up.
If we're not, we're up that. And that's spelled out in the waste plan that we provided for that.
It's spelled out in here.
7, the solar gain utilized by active or passive solar energy collecting systems that may be impacted by the land use is adequately protected. Is that relevant?
We're not utilizing any solar at this time, anyhow.
That's not applicable then. Number 8, any relevant detrimental effects of smoke and dust from the land use are adequately mitigated. I don't believe that's happening.
Everything's paved, so.
Any relevant detrimental effects of subterranean vibration from the land use, they're adequately mitigated. I don't believe that would be applicable. Site visit, let's see how. Special conditions to ensure compliance. Okay, public safety standards. Public safety objectives that must be met, except as noted. The quantity and quality of public and private drinking water supplies are adequately protected from any relevant detrimental effects of land use. Doesn't seem applicable to me.
Could you talk a bit, Jim, about the water consumption plan for this?
Yeah, we've talked about it with the water district, and the capacity is adequate up there. We've given some estimates on utilization right now, and those are more than within the range that the district can supply us, or the department can supply us. So we don't anticipate any issues there. And understand that the fire department has been up there and actually with several pumper trucks, and with the booster station up there still didn't have any issues running out of water with the size of the booster station and for the park up there. So should be more than adequate supply for us.
And they've done a hydrant test.
I don't know that they've done a physical hydrant test on it. They told me there was about 80 psi available static, which is plenty. And then they didn't give us a flow. Basically, the standpoint was that he said that, he's had a couple pumper trucks up there pumping at the same time out of a couple different hydrants, and they didn't run dry. So
those are tested every year by the water company. Matter of fact, they're tested in my neighborhood today.
They're flushed, but they are not.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
They aren't rated. They aren't flow rated. They're flushed.
They had a gauge on it today.
Oh, really? Interesting.
They did. Yeah, I don't know if they put that on every fire hydrant in this town, but the one outside my house, they flow tested it and then they gauged it. So again, I don't know if they do that to everyone. But.
He didn't indicate it on this one because I did ask him for the flow, what the flows were, and the reference was a pumper truck. So if he has them, he didn't have them available at the time I was talking with him. But
water flow was an issue at the very beginning up there, and this station took care of that.
Yeah. Well, we had a little bit of misunderstanding. We thought the pressure was quite low, actually, and didn't realize it was already.
It was.
We didn't realize it was already a booster station on it, so we were automatically thinking we were going to be adding a booster station internally to the facility. But then when I finally talked to him, he indicated that, no, we got
It's at the end of the entrance road.
Services up there, so.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on the private or public drinking water protection? I think that's good. Number 2, safety and sufficiency of energy supply services adequately protected from any detrimental effects of land use. I can't see that that's applicable. Doesn't even seem like it's applicable.
They get the wires up or just poles out there?
Last I was out there, it was just the poles, but they'll be back to straighten the wires. They probably won't energize them until somebody makes a service call, which will probably be us at the point in time when we need to get temporary set up.
Number 3, public safety services are adequately protected from any relevant detrimental effects of the land use. Does not seem applicable to me.
We had no comments from department heads, police, fire.
The fire chief asked the question, is the building going to be sprinklered? And the answer he received from me after talking to the architect is no, it won't be sprinklered. Unless the fire marshal for some reason decides it needs to be, but I don't think that's going to happen.
We have to review the size. We will be going to the fire marshal.
And he also asked the question if the building was going to have a security alarm system. And the answer to that question was that the building will have cameras and motion detectors.
Yeah, we have a security system.
You have to have card readers to get in the building, right? Other than,
Is that going to be?
there must be a public,
Staff will all have card readers. The public access to the lobby will not, but then inside the plant to go into processing, you have to have a card reader. And then the exit over there from the loading dock area would be a card reader and a buzzing. So staff could go in there, but if the visitor comes, the delivery comes, and wants to go into the
okay,
building.
so there is security.
Are those monitors and cameras monitored by a third party, or is that something you're going to contain in-house?
I don't know if the cameras will be monitored by a third party. I didn't really thought about that. That'd be in house, but the alarm system will be third party.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, number 4, public wastewater facilities are adequately protected from any detrimental effects of the land use. Does anyone think that's applicable?
Number 4, you said?
Yeah, number 4.
Yeah, that is most definitely applicable, yeah.
Okay.
The reason for that is because of the questions that the sewer department has asked about the quality of the wastewater.
You mentioned that,
Yeah.
yes.
I don't think you're
So
here yet,
it's
Jim,
the
for that.
pH, the pH question.
They've been asking about the BOD, and we're still researching that. So as time goes on, whether we have to do any pre-treatment on it or additional treatment before it actually leaves the site will be a determination of what we find out from BOD contents form.
One of the last, really before you, was a septic pumpage system, and that's already caused problems there at that one. But I don't know if they've gotten that straightened out yet.
I'm not sure if that's been resolved yet or not. He also
The only question that was posed to me was the BOD content on it. So we're looking at that. And we've also provided a manhole at the service connection so that they have a visual point of connection so that if they have any questions, they can go up and sample and address it at that point in time. So.
I had a brief discussion with Dave Mishu today because he hadn't really responded to the request for comments. He thought the meeting was later on in the month than it is. But he mentioned, in addition to BODs, also ammonia levels and pH.
Okay.
Did he talk to you about that?
No, I haven't talked to him about that.
All right. Number 5, proper management of solid wastes is adequately protected from any relevant detrimental effects of the land use.
So solid waste are being removed daily? What you said?
The lobster solid waste will be removed daily. The general waste for the facility will probably be on a weekly basis for the dumpster disposal, depending on how generation is through the office and employees. But the fish waste, the lobster waste, will be removed on a daily basis.
6, the safety and sufficiency of streets and sidewalks are adequately protected from any relevant detrimental effects of land use. Can't imagine that's applicable at this point. You're the last one at the end of the...
And there's no sidewalks up there on Heritage Park.
Anyone need a site visit to document and verify compliance? Also not applicable. Special conditions to ensure compliance? I don't think anything is applicable. All right, specific uses standards is the next section. Specific uses objectives that must be met.
There's one in section 13 that would apply there, and that's the parking requirements. And parking requirements for production uses, which is the category that covers this proposed land use. 1 space for each employee, and 1 space for every 200 square feet of floor area utilized for retail sales. That's 0 in this case here, but there is a need for 1 space per employee. How many employees we have?
We've estimated that to be, less than the 39 spaces that we have allocated on there.
That's going to meet your employee parking needs?
Yeah.
Any dealing with the general public? Vendors?
There may be an occasional vendor in on it. We've allocated, what we've got is a couple handicap spaces, and we've talked about basically allocating, 1 or 2 spaces right by the main entrance to accommodate a visitor or a vendor coming in to oversee it, or compliance or whatever, basically being able to park right at the entrance.
Any other objectives that should be on it? Next, site visit documentation to verify compliance with any of the use objectives. Doesn't seem necessary. Special conditions to assure compliance for any specific uses? No, that as well. All right, lot dimensions. Dimension objectives that must be met.
There are 2 that apply to this project. One is the building setback, which is 10 feet from property lines. I think this site plan shows that being met. And the second one is building height. In the C3 district, the building height, the limit is 75 feet. The height of the building is
18-ish at the peak.
That's met. Any other objectives?
That's all that apply to this.
Okay. Site visit necessary? Special conditions to ensure compliance? I'd say no. Anything else before we go over the findings? You guys? No?
You aren't lighting your sign out front?
Right now, there's no anticipation of lighting the sign. We didn't provide power out to it at the current time. It's not a high, high visible utilization facility. It's pretty much, it's there and you're coming to it. So there wasn't a need to light the sign.
And any plantings in that front end area?
We weren't being in the industrial park. We weren't, proposing any at this point in time. And we didn't see anything under the ordinance as far as any screening or buffering that would be applicable to this. So at the current time, we're not proposing any.
Okay.
It'll all be lands, grassed and lawned and seeding and grassed in. But
Right, ready to go through the findings? Findings for environmental standards. Is there clear and convincing evidence in the record to support the conclusion that the above applicable environment objectives have been met? I believe this requires a show of hands.
There's a motion and second. They show of hands.
Yeah, motion to vote, yes.
Could you? I didn't get the second on that.
Oh.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
You can say. Okay.
Typically in the past, what the board has done is to state as the motion that proposed land use will have no impact on the environment in this case. That's contrary to the purposes of this ordinance. And that was seconded, then you vote on that.
Okay, sounds good. Let's do that.
So moved.
Thank you. All right, make a motion. Is there clear and convincing evidence just in the record to support the conclusion that the above applicable special area objectives have been met?
There were none that were applicable, so there's no need to make a finding.
Okay, so there are no applicable special area objectives. A vote is not required. Next, the local area standards. Were there any applicable local area objectives?
Yes, there were.
Oh, yes, there were, okay. Yeah, the perimeter buffer, lighting, sound, waste.
So the motion again would be the proposed land use will have no impact on local areas that's contrary to the purposes of this ordinance. That's typically how you form your motions.
Move that the proposed land use will have no impact on local areas as contrary to the purposes of this ordinance.
I second. Vote for yes, that they have been met. Show of hands. Unanimous? Yes. Passes. Public safety standards. There's several here. Motion to decide, is there clear and convincing evidence in the record to support that the applicable public safety objectives have been met?
Your turn.
The proposed land use will have no impact on public safety that is contrary to the purposes of this ordinance.
Second.
Vote. All yea? Proposed land use will have no impact on public safety. Specific use standards.
Again, based on the evidence contained in the plan and that discussion, the proposed land use has met all applicable specific use standards in this ordinance.
Is that a motion?
That's one.
That is.
Yeah, I'll second that. Vote for proposed land use has met all applicable specific standards in this ordinance. The dimensions of the lot, the findings on that. A motion that the proposed land use has met all applicable dimension standards in this ordinance as mentioned by Jeff.
Second.
Vote for the proposed land use has met all the dimension standards. Motion carries. Decision, based on the conclusion of the planning board as documented above, the proposed land use, I would make a motion that will not have any impact that is contrary to the purposes of Appendix K, land use, and therefore the application is approved.
Second.
Vote. All yea? The application is approved. Very fine application indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Look forward to getting that under construction. You want me to call Dave and get that stuff worked out?
Yeah, you gotta sort it out with him.
Sorry about that. I got scared a little. Usually the companies that tell me to
Special use and industrial.
No.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Very good. Appreciate it.
You gonna have any seconds on sale out there?
That's like asking for a little fishing pool up at the New Salmon. Actually, I don't eat lobster, so if there are seconds, you can have my place in line. But I sure do like salmon.
If it comes to lobster or steak, I go for steak, but I do eat some lobster occasionally.
Well, why not both?
Ready to move on?
I'm ready to move on. Item 8, administrative business. A, 2017 comprehensive plan goals and strategies implementation, which there was a little discussion on last time.
Would you rather wait to
I was
continue.
wondering if there should be a motion to do this when we had maybe the full board.
Right. And the two new members have not seen the handout I've given to the board about the goals and objectives.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to hand those out tonight to you guys.
Okay, thank you.
What this is it's a list of all the goals, strategies for the comprehensive plan. And at the last meeting, the board went through the entire list and identified those that the board is involved with. So what they decided to do at the last meeting was prioritize the ones that they're involved with, and obviously you don't know which ones they have. I'm not sure if... I have those in my copy, but what I'll do is I will make a list of the ones that the board identified for their purposes and email them to you.
Fine, that'll be fine.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, sounds good.
I forgot to bring them with me.
Yeah, I didn't bring them either.
So you just want to table further discussion on that for now?
Yeah, do we need to make a motion and vote on it, or just table it?
You can go ahead and motion in a second.
I'll make that motion that we table it pending further information.
Second. Vote. Yea or nay? Unanimous. Yay. Item B, proposed amendments to Appendix C, subdivisions.
Well, I gave you, in your packet, I gave you copies of the proposed amendments. This is not something that you have to act on because Appendix C is an ordinance that you're involved with, but in terms of amendments, you don't really have any direct involvement, but it hasn't been taken to the ordinance committee yet, so I wanted to get your feedback because it does involve some of the review standards. But the copy I gave you is not the most current one. I have another copy because there's been something added that wasn't in. I had to take one pass around. So I'll point out what that is in a second.
So all of that review here, we just throw it out.
No, it's his use.
My homework done. The Dave doesn't even listen.
That part stays. This part stays. Again.
I guess we can just tear that one up, can't we?
I have an extra copy, Jim. Would you like one?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, I think I did the wrong.
Thank you.
So the proposed amendments to the subdivision ordinance are summarized on the first page. It's a proposed amendment to correct a conflict with the state subdivision law, to provide for the use of gravel roads, and to update phosphorus control measures. So the amendment reads as follows. There's actually no changes on the first page. I reproduced the entire section that's impacted by the amendment, but you don't get to the actual amendment until the second page. And that has to do with a change in subdivision law that was made in the statute. There was a condition in the law that allowed a municipality to review a subdivision involving leased dwelling units if it had been determined that... I gotta close that door. Yes, please. If it had been determined that the municipality had an ordinance in place that was adequate to review those types of subdivisions, and we had determined that we did. In fact, Appendix K, our land use ordinance, documents that those types of subdivisions can be reviewed as a site plan review, not a subdivision review. But the state amended the law and took that exception out. So the change in our subdivision ordinance reflects that change in state law. And on page 2, section 3.6 is deleted because it's no longer allowed under state law. And then 3.7 and 3 are just renumbered to remain consistent. So now if somebody wants to add 3 apartments in their building or build a 3-apartment brand-new building, it's going to be reviewed as a subdivision, not a level 2 review.
No, interesting.
Any questions about that?
No.
That's just keeping in line with the new law.
That's right, yeah.
Good, thank you.
Section 8.3, streets. This is a change that just came up recently. I was having a discussion with a property owner who owns property out with frontage on Brewer Lake, and he was asking questions about developing a small subdivision with lots that has shore frontage. And I pointed out to him that currently any road that's proposed for a subdivision is required to be paved. And he wondered why that would be without any ability to make exceptions. And the Appendix C specifically says the planning board cannot waive the requirements for asphalt on roads that are proposed for a subdivision. His subdivision would utilize an existing camp road, and he would extend it to reach his property, and the camp lots or house lots he's proposing would be accessed that way. If he were to bring that plan to you today, he would have to pave the entire road from where it intersects with the public road. So the existing camp road and any extension he made to it would all need to be paved.
So not just the new stuff would need to be paved.
Right.
Yeah. The only road that fits that description would be Wilderness Way, correct?
Well, no, we have several roads that could be used to access properties that might have subdivisions proposed.
Yeah.
Strickland Ridge Road is another one.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's Wilderness Way.
There's a few out there, but very few actually have camps.
Upper Long Pond Road
that are in Bucksport. Some of them lead out to Brewer Lake, but very few are actually in Bucksport.
Yeah. In this case here, the property is out in that neighborhood and is accessed both by Strickland Ridge Road and Old Wilderness Way.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the way he proposed to extend. Because there's a shorter route to come down Wilderness Way to get to his property than it is to go down Strickland Ridge Road. He built a timber harvesting road off Strickland Ridge Road, a well-built road, and he has ideas in mind about possible further development down there. But having to pave a road is problematic because it doesn't make the project cost effective.
Right.
So this language here allows the planning board to accept a gravel road, and there are 2 points. The board may approve the use of a mineral surface for a proposed street that does not intersect with a public way, provided that the street design will comply with an approved stormwater management plan for the subdivision. So if you have a proposed street that intersects with a public road, it will have to be paved. Royal Ridge, for example, is an example of a subdivision road that intersects with a public street. That road was required to be paved, and I think rightly so. But if you have a road that's out in the boonies, and it doesn't directly connect to a public road, and this is a scenario that we're dealing with in this property out there, is why require that to be paved if the road complies with stormwater management requirements?
Name a point that it doesn't connect with it.
Ask me again. Yeah, what was that?
Name a point on a road that does not connect with a public road.
A point on a road that doesn't connect.
I mean, wouldn't everything eventually connect?
Everything comes off paved road.
Everything comes off a public road. I don't see any.
Right, but that first exception I'm reading, it applies to roads that don't intersect.
Not directly.
Right.
They don't.
Don't intersect.
A road off a road off a road off a road.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Like, for example, Strickland Ridge Road intersects with Bucks Mills Road, which is a public road. But the road that he built to get to his property does not intersect with Bucks Mills Road. It intersects with Strickland Ridge Road.
So this road in question could intersect.
So it's Strickland Ridge Road paved.
Right. It's not.
No, it's not.
So this road...
And it intersects with a public way.
Right, but in this case here, the subdivision is being proposed off of Strickland Ridge Road on a different road altogether. So this language here would allow you to accept a gravel road in that scenario. The second one, it deals with existing roads. The board may approve the use of an existing private road finished with a mineral surface to provide access to a proposed subdivision, provided that the road is improved to the extent necessary to comply with the requirements of Chapter 10, Roads and Streets, and to comply with an approved stormwater management plan for the subdivision. So all that's saying, essentially, if you want to put a subdivision on Strickland Ridge Road, we'll use that example again, you got to bring that road up to standards, except it doesn't need to be paved.
Yeah, oh, okay. So there's surface gravel and base gravel.
Whatever standards are in Chapter 10 apply to road construction.
To the bottom of the pavement.
Yeah.
Basically. Okay.
And the road would need to be part of an approved stormwater management plan for that subdivision.
Yeah, ditching and, yeah.
So those are two changes that are proposed for street requirements for subdivisions. And that just came about yesterday. As a matter of fact, he was in my office, and I asked the question, well, why can't you allow a graveled road to be part of a subdivision if it made sense to do that? And so these two scenarios, I think, make sense. But
gravel roads shed less phosphorus, I believe, than paved, so it's an improvement in a way, oddly. It is. Nice.
Remember bridge development, the region, just beyond the transfer station up in there?
Royal Ridge,
yeah. Now, originally, that development, I wouldn't have minded that just be a gravel road for, we allowed it to be till so many lots were developed, and then he had to pave it. So,
I don't recall that condition, but that was back when, it still is, a requirement for any subdivision that involves a new road has to be paved.
Yeah. Well, they did build a gravel road and then developed a few of the lots and then paved. I didn't see any harm in that.
Yeah. But with these changes, it's still going to be required. If you're proposing a subdivision that involves a new road that intersects with a town road, you still have to pave it.
Yeah.
And that can't be waived.
Yeah.
I think we allowed him to do phased paving on that as he sold lots, didn't we? I mean, we did something special on that one.
Yeah, we did.
That made it happen.
You get a lot of heavy traffic in there when you're developing it and stuff, so it's actually a good idea to postpone the paving till a proportion of it is, you can put a time limit on it or something, 2 years of development, and then you pave it, or 60% developed, you can, but the understanding is, yes, it will be paved, but, I don't know, you hate to pave something and then have it torn up, and then have to pave it again, but you get no life expectancy out of it, so. That's not good for the developer or the town, so.
You okay with that one? Mm-hmm. All right. The next one is in section 811, the natural resources section. The actual changes start on the next page. And this is an update to reflect the changes that DEP has made to their phosphorus control regulations. Yeah. It references the main stormwater management design manual as being applicable when determining phosphorus export from a proposed subdivision.
Yeah. That is the new one they're recommending.
What's that?
That's the new one they're recommending to replace the older.
Yeah, that's what's in place now. Yeah. So,
the MSND manual.
Do we change because the comp plan uses the older one? I guess you can't update the comp plan. That's been approved, anyways. Okay, so that's interesting.
I think the date of the new one is 2011. I didn't put the date in here because we'd have to revise the ordinance every time the date, the guide was updated. So I just stated that the most recent edition is the one that applies.
That's a good idea.
And I added in section 811.8 per year, which for some reason was missing, but that's an important, I think, point to make, is the phosphorus export is pounds per acre per year.
Yeah.
The numbers, by the way, have not changed in the guide. The manuals have exactly the same numbers that were in the older one from 1992. But as you read down through in section 811.9, it says section 811 must be updated as required by amendments to the comprehensive plan, reflecting changes in expected development rates. The comprehensive plan, I don't think, expresses any concern about development rate changes in phosphorus.
I'd have to look at it. It does mention phosphorus, but I don't know if it specifically does it in that manner.
811.10, 811.11, 811.12 are deleted because it makes reference to two review methods that were in the old guide but are not in the new one. The new guide has, and I copied this for you, has an alternative method for small commercial type developments. 3, 4, 5. Take one pass up, please.
So this is superseded by the new management, stormwater management design manual?
The deleted text is not relevant any longer because it's talking about something that is in an older plan that's been removed and changed.
Thank you.
The alternative method for small commercial type developments that are located within designated growth areas is what the new manual refers to. And that involves DEP. DEP has to get involved in whether or not this alternative method is appropriate to use for a proposed subdivision or any sort of development. So that's why all that text has been deleted. And the last change is just replacing reference to the technical guide with the wording MSMD manual.
Cool.
Any questions or concerns about Appendix C changes?
You say this is going to the ordinance committee?
It's on the agenda for the ordinance committee on May 10th. They have devoted 2 hours to review not just this one, but there's a few other things on the agenda to review, including the next amendment on our agenda tonight is an amendment to Appendix K. It's on the planning board, the ordinance committee agenda. They were going to review it and make their recommendations back to the planning board. Because, I don't know if you recall, but there's a charter change made. The charter change now requires that proposed amendments to Appendix K come from the planning board and are directly reviewed by the town council. They no longer go to the ordinance committee. It's not to say the ordinance committee can start a review and then refer to you what the changes they think should be made. But the end result of a proposed amendment will come directly from this board to the town council for their review.
Right.
Okay. Want a copy, John?
I have a copy.
It's been changed. It's been changed. No, it's been changed since it was posted on the internet. There's an initial change made to this one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
More waste paper?
Yeah, so what I handed out to you in your packet, I have added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah. There you go.
So this first reading is...
The one in your packet, yeah, you want to disregard that one, and I'll point out what I added in just a moment here. So, the summary says it's a proposed amendment to Appendix K land use ordinance to remove a conflict with the state subdivision law, which I talked about earlier, to add regulations and a definition for tiny houses, to clarify stormwater management plan requirements, and this next one is the one that's been added, to clarify street frontage requirements for lots in a shoreline district, and to address parking requirements for dwelling units in the downtown and downtown shoreline district. So the First Amendment deals with this table here, housing land uses. And if you look at note E9, wherever note E9 is in the table applies to dwelling units. And the note has been amended to delete level 2, replace it with subdivision review. So that just simply reflects what the change is being made in Appendix C to remove the conflict with state law. The next page changes multifamily dwellings from an L2, a level 2 review, to no review done under Appendix K. That's the 0. The 0 means you don't review it under Appendix K. But a note has been added, E14, which is actually on the next page. Multifamily dwellings are subject to compliance with Appendix C subdivision ordinance. So wherever multifamily dwellings are allowed and whatever zoning districts they're allowed in, you got to do a subdivision review, no longer a level 2 review. And then further down you see where tiny houses, a row has been added for tiny houses. And this one I want to get your thoughts on this. You see there's a lot of X's that are shown right now where tiny houses would not be allowed.
Yeah.
And the ones that I'm starting off with as allowed uses are the Route 15 residential commercial district, which is up Route 15, the R1 and R2 district, which covers a lot of area in the back parts of town. But no shoreline zone and no areas in the compact area, no zones in the compact area are being proposed unless you think they should be. So are there other zones in the town where you think tiny homes should be allowed, other than I've identified?
Well, the idea behind all this whole tiny house movement is because people are trying to save money and either get off the grid.
Energy.
Say what?
Save energy.
Right.
Yeah.
Save energy, all kinds of things. So to put a lot of restrictions on that almost restricts that whole movement.
Yeah, this is just property rights tax. That's nuts.
So what's your suggested change?
As long as they're hooked up to a sewer and some source of fresh water.
What's unique about the definition of tiny house?
It's less than 400 square feet. 400 square feet and smaller would be a tiny house by definition.
10 by 40 trailer.
Tar paper shack?
Did I read somewhere that a tiny house must be on the foundation?
Yes, right here.
Cannot
Well,
be on a pad.
Yes.
Well, you have tiny houses that are built on frames, trailer frames, and they're
And I see what that's addressed around the trailer frame.
But I'm suggesting that to be recognized as a dwelling in the town of Bucksport, a tiny house has to be on permanent foundation. It can't be on wheels.
Which would
seasonal. Yes.
Well, recreational vehicles, and that's something that can be clarified. That can be clarified that a tiny house can be used for seasonal occupancy. I don't know if it's. I don't think that's clearly stated at this point in time. But to get back where tiny houses should be allowed, is it your preference that they should be allowed wherever one-family dwellings are allowed, which are stated just above that? You can see the row there for one-family dwellings. Downtown shoreland, C1 district, and there's several shoreland districts where they're allowed. They're allowed on Route 1, and of course the R1 and R2 district, and even in the village district there, one-family dwellings is allowed. Should tiny houses also be allowed in all those areas? It's up to you.
I would think so. The size of someone's house or their ability to live and what they could afford or what they're attempting to do shouldn't necessarily be determined by their location. if you had a piece of land or had the ability to obtain a piece of land for a reasonable price and wanted to put a reasonable house on that location,
and you couldn't afford a 100,000 square foot home.
right? Then you should.
What's the difference?
Then you shouldn't be restricted by the fact that it's not allowed on that particular street or in that section.
If it conforms to everything else, I mean,
Right.
why not? I guess that's my take on it. Why not?
Could it negatively impact the value of your house? If someone puts one next to your house, just a tiny little minimum 10-foot setback,
Hey, if it
minimum
meets the
lot.
codes, I mean, does it matter? I mean, if it meets code,
No, I'm just raising the question.
Yeah, no, it's a
That
good
would be
one.
the only question I would have. How would it affect the property value of my frickin' house?
Right.
good thought.
I don't know what the facts are.
And what?
Maybe it'll increase.
Right. And what sort of taxing scenario is assessed with
I'm in a
that?
housing development.
What's that?
Here in town. I'm in a housing development.
Yeah.
But there are covenants. You can't build anything less than 1,080 square feet. So,
Right.
you know, that automatically does it. But that could be up to the developer as far as covenants on what can go on the lots, minimum sizes, etc. Doesn't have to be the government telling you.
But also with that, if it was a permanent dwelling, if it was someone's permanent residence, and if it was in town, then your comment of being hooked up to water and sewer would be absolutely accurate. You wouldn't want a tiny house that is not hooked up to those facilities being somebody's permanent residence located within the means of them being hooked up to those types of things.
An outhouse.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of them have bio toilets.
Yeah, that's right. That's a
Other
good
stuff.
point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
It does away with.
Yeah, that does away with those types of things. Yeah, that's a good point.
We'll get to the standards for tiny homes are further in.
Oh, good.
So, if I understand the board correctly, you'd like to allow tiny houses in the same districts where one-family dwellings are allowed, without exception.
Follow the code. If I say
If it's not in a subdivision, yeah.
Well, what's the difference with subdivision?
Violate the covenants.
Well, if there's covenants.
Oh, you mean the existing subdivision?
Right.
If somebody proposed a tiny house subdivision?
Yeah, you could do a proposed tiny house subdivision.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
You know, but,
Wouldn't that be interesting?
It would really.
yeah.
Does anyone have one yet?
No.
No,
I don't know.
You ever go off the road, turn off the road on Route 1 going down from Belfast and go through Northport?
Yeah.
There's a whole little village in there.
Oh, yeah, that's been there forever. They go for a couple $100,000, little tiny houses. They look like doll houses.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
You can smell salt water down in there, so probably that's where they're going.
And also, the Under 500 Club was started in the 70s.
Oh, really? So this is no new movement.
The ones in Belfast have been there forever.
Yeah. I watched.
A little settlement hall down there.
So did we need to do a vote on that, Jeff?
Oh,
Is that, are we at that point?
One of it. And there's another name I can't remember.
Wait till we get the attention of the board again here.
I
Okay.
used to work there. I should know the name. Can't think.
Do you want to make a formal motion and vote on that change? Or do I have a consensus of the board that you want to change the tiny house restrictions to those that apply to one-family dwellings as to where they can go?
I'd make that motion, yes.
I would second that.
Yep, I would.
Okay, I will do that. And just to wrap up that section, there's a note E13 in that road, and the note says that tiny houses that are built on the frame of a motor vehicle or trailer are prohibited.
Where's this?
Note E13.
Okay.
Tiny houses that are built on the frame of a motor vehicle or trailer are prohibited. So the fifth wheel trailer type tiny houses that people are buying the trailers and building the tiny house on these trailers.
Yeah, so if you have a pickup
Yeah.
with a frame, and you're building your tiny house where your bed would go normally.
Right. Yeah.
You see those all the time. Those would not be allowed to be used as a dwelling.
Right. But it says motor vehicle or trailer.
Or trailer, right? So you give a trailer frame.
Yep.
You put your tiny house on that, and you haul it with a pickup or whatever.
Yeah. And that would be prohibited.
Those are campers, aren't they?
Basically.
Yeah, they are.
What's not being addressed here, and could be, is the seasonal use of those types of structures.
Yeah.
Well, if they're on a frame and they're mobile, yeah, people are not using them to stay at home. They're used to move.
I think they probably...
Everybody's got RVs. You can call it an RV, you call it a tiny home, it's still the same thing. It's mobile.
Right. If it's mobile, it's just constructed differently.
I don't care if they call it a tiny house or an RV, it's still...
So the definition of recreational vehicle is a self-propelled motorhome vehicle designed for seasonal use as a temporary sleeping and living quarters for one or more persons. So it's not technically a motor home. We think a motor home, that's a structure that's been built to a standard. It's been manufactured to a standard.
Campers.
Right.
Yes.
Also, but it can be moved under its own power.
But perhaps we could tweak the definition of recreational vehicle to include, to make it clear that tiny houses built that are mobile fall into that category.
That's a smart idea.
And to remove that, just to be clear, am I correct in saying that a mobile home now, a actual mobile home, is if you remove the wheels from it, then you fall within, then it is a mobile home. It's not classified as something movable, correct? Once the wheels are removed. So would that fall into the same category?
Well, there's nothing. I don't think there's anything in the installation standards for mobile homes that requires you to remove the tires.
Okay.
It needs to be blocked up.
Right. Okay.
Before you can occupy it, but the tires, I think, can stay on it.
Okay. So it would be the same thing for a tiny home. I have this image stuck in my head of these fifth wheel trailers that people build these houses on, and I've seen some of them look quite nice, and I'd hate to put any unnecessary restrictions on some of these nice little tiny houses that are built on some of these trailers.
Well, if we call them recreational vehicles, they can be used for seasonal occupancy in Bucksport, but not for year-round. Okay.
No, I'm not.
Just like a camper. A camper can be lived in seasonally, but not year-round.
Right. Yeah.
So I'll make that change to the recreational vehicle definition. All right, so moving on. Move on. Okay. Section 12, environment standards, and the actual change is on the next page. That clarifies that if you require secondary documentation to address any stormwater management requirements, that documentation is provided through the main Stormwater Management Design Manual that we just talked about in Appendix C. That's the document that the applicant will have to use to satisfy your stormwater management requirement plans. It's not clear right now about what they're supposed to use, but this actually clarifies that. And then Section 13, specific land use standards. This is where the actual standards that pertain to tiny houses are located. Tiny houses are subject to compliance with the applicable requirements of the main Uniform Building and Energy Code. There's actually an appendix that was added to the MUBAC specifically for tiny houses. And it addresses things like stairways and loft areas, because typically tiny houses have lofts that are accessed by ladders almost. And if you apply the International Residential Code to that, they fail. They can't, because you can't use a ladder to access a loft area under the IRC, but under the appendix you can. And the changes we're making to Chapter 5 recognize that we are going to apply that appendix that pertains to tiny houses in Bucksport. 13.6.14.2, tiny houses must be supported by a foundation constructed in accordance with the applicable requirements of the International Residential Code, as adopted by the state of Maine. Tiny houses must be provided with the minimum plumbing fixtures required for a one-family dwelling as identified in the Uniform Plumbing Code adopted by the state of Maine, except that a clothes washer hookup is not required. And the reason why I added that is because those take up a lot of space.
Yeah.
And you're not going to find those typically in a tiny house.
Correct.
And the last one, tiny houses must be provided with a connection to a subsurface wastewater disposal system approved by the Bucksport Plumbing Inspector, or
Excellent.
a connection to the public sewer approved by the Bucksport Sewer Department.
Oh, perfect.
Power is not addressed. It's not addressed for dwellings. You can have power from CMP, or you can have solar power. You can have wind power.
Generator.
No, not generator. Generators are for backup power, but not for continuous power. They're for emergency use only. And then the next section is just renumbered because this section on tiny houses was added in there. All right, so the next one is a change that I think should be made, depending on what your thoughts are, to address, we already have a requirement that allows existing public parking spaces in the downtown and downtown shoreline districts to satisfy the requirements for any commercial or non-commercial use of a property, existing building on Main Street. It doesn't address, however, the parking requirements if you're going to add a dwelling unit in these buildings on Main Street. And because of the changes that have been made in the dimensional standards that apply to the shoreline zone we're in here, we could start seeing dwelling units in buildings where it wasn't possible before because of the dimensional standards that prohibited it.
Right.
So the changes are: existing public parking spaces in the downtown and downtown shoreline districts shall fulfill the parking requirements for any existing or proposed commercial or non-commercial use of an existing building on Main Street that's not provided with an on-site parking lot. Any public parking lot allowing overnight parking shall fulfill the parking requirements for any dwelling unit that may be allowed in an existing building occupied with a commercial or non-commercial use. So what that's saying is, for example, the Chamber building is changing hands. It's going to be privately owned. I think the new owner is considering having a commercial use on the first story and putting an apartment above. Right now, the ordinance requires them to provide a parking space on that lot, and it's not possible. So this change would allow this change would allow a parking in a public parking lot that allows overnight parking to satisfy the requirements for parking in that case there. And by the way, there is a change that's also being proposed to Chapter 12 that affects the restriction of overnight parking in this parking lot here. Currently, right now, there's no overnight parking allowed in this parking lot. Although it has happened, I think motel patrons park there a lot overnight.
Yes.
And one of the conditions of the sale of the Chamber property is to provide 2 parking spaces for the owner. And those parking spaces are going to be taken out of the parking that we have here now that's being used by employees. But we need to amend Chapter 12 to recognize that you can do that. You can allow overnight parking in designated spaces in this parking lot. So that's coming to the council for consideration.
Mm-hmm. So is there, and now I haven't read it yet, obviously, where I just received it, but is there going to be more parking as part of the town's comprehensive plan to develop more public parking space? I know there was a thing with the Nason property off Central Street that was going to continue to get developed. Is that coming to fruition or not?
I'm not sure what the status of that is, Steve. How much more public parking needs to be provided downtown? I don't think it's been really closely studied as to if the parking we have now is sufficient for the foreseeable future or not. I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I know the building that was torn down was going to be converted to park.
Yeah, and it may still be. It may
The
still
town
be.
hasn't approached the planning board to do it yet.
Right, I was going to point that out. You have to approve that expansion of parking there. So, are you okay with this change, though, pertaining to how parking is provided for dwelling units? not apartment building, dwelling units in commercial buildings only. So if you
Well,
had,
if it's in a commercial building, it's probably an apartment.
we had a building downtown that was, the proposed change of use was to a multifamily dwelling. This isn't going to help them. They need to provide parking on the property, unless they are able to get a variance or something like that. But this only addresses buildings, commercial buildings, where the owner wants to add an apartment in the building. It has the space to do it.
I see no issue with that.
The only issue I have that I see often is just in the wintertime when our parking
Plowing,
ordinance
snow removal.
Plowing and snow removal, because I've been the one for the last several years in the middle
Yeah,
of the
they're
night.
knocking on doors to take off and work.
Right, looking for someone to move their car because it doesn't fit. They can't have it there because it's in public parking and it doesn't fit in with.
Didn't really thought of that.
That's the only issue I have with that, is if does that help things? I don't see it helping that much necessarily.
Well, keep in mind, it's only when there's been the change in Chapter 12 only pertains to this parking lot.
Oh, okay.
So parking lots now that prohibit overnight parking, other than this one, will remain that way.
Yeah. Okay.
And we have some parking lots that require odd and even.
Right.
Park on one side on odd days and the other side on even days.
So, but being the change to this parking lot, where would this parking lot stop and start in regards to the fitness center or the medical center here, and the parking that's used for the hotel?
That parking on the hotel is on public property, town-owned property.
It is, okay.
Yeah. So if the town wants to continue that practice of allowing them for their motel patrons to park there overnight, if there's no room in their parking lot, then if they approve the change to Chapter 12, they'll put up signs that say, this is for overnight parking. This area here is for overnight parking.
Oh, okay.
And the same will apply to the Chamber building. There'll be signage that says overnight parking for tenant use or whatever, something like that.
Oh, okay. All right.
So like most of these that are on the waterfront here, no overnight parking signs will remain there.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That makes sense then. Okay.
I have a question with E6.
E6. Where are you? What page is that?
On 9.5.
E6. Okay. What's your question?
Okay, I live up in Woodland Heights, and I don't see why multifamily dwellings would be not allowed. Of course, you've got most of your residential lots, but somebody approached us and wanted to put 50 trailers in there as part of that subdivision, and that wasn't brought up then.
Yeah.
Why? What's come about here?
This is a current requirement. This isn't a proposed change. E6 is in the ordinance now.
I've never seen Woodland Heights exempted from.
It's been in our land use ordinance since 2010.
I mean, you turn off up towards Little League Field, and you win. And on the left side is Eastman, that lot. Of course, it's not a very good lot. It needs to be cleaned up, really. And but that lot actually would make for a nice 8-10 unit row house there.
Yeah. I think you'll find, Ed, that the streets that are listed in E6 all are subdivision streets. Yeah. And the subdivision has a covenant that allows for one-family dwellings only. So I think that's the rationale behind stating and clearly in the ordinance that you can't have
that street abuts a property that is not that subdivision, so I don't see.
Well, the Eastman, that's access through Central Street.
Yeah.
So that's not on
It is private,
Heights,
but
so.
actually, that lot fits pretty good coming out. If it had more, if you were looking at controlling traffic, I'd rather have Woodland Heights than another 100 feet up the road as far as controlling traffic in and out loop. So,
Did you have a suggested change to that footnote?
I don't know, actually, I think that lot could be developable. It's a relatively odd shade lot, but right now it's rather contaminated, I would say.
That property is in the village district, and multifamily dwellings are allowed in the village district, so.
But see, that side of that road is that lot.
Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah, but it's access from Central Street.
And then up beyond the water tower, in that area, behind the original lot survey of Buck Estates, that area wasn't part of the original plot plan. And that's where somebody wanted to put 50 trailers in there or whatever. So we didn't seem to have a problem with that.
Do you have a proposed change?
No. Not right yet.
Maybe but we could revisit that maybe at a later date. Where were we? Parking, yeah. So are you all okay with the changes to section 1315.87, parking lot?
I'm all set with it.
Okay, moving on. This is the change that was added after the packet had gone out and after the proposed amendment had been posted to the website for the ordinance committee, and that's because of another issue that's brought up by the same property owner out on Bucks Mills Road on the Brewer Lake lots. Currently, if you wanted to propose a subdivision lot that fronted on Brewer Lake or any water body, you have to have a X number of feet of shore frontage. In this case, on Brewer Lake, it's 200 feet. The back line of that lot, however, would need to be 400 feet wide because it's a subdivision. And the street frontage and lot sizes are doubled in the R2 district, which is the underlying district in that area. It didn't make much sense to say you only have to have 200 feet on one end of the lot, but you got to have 400 feet on the other end, because the ordinance says that. So this proposed change addresses that by saying that any lot that fronts on a street must have a minimum street frontage that's no less than the minimum shore frontage required for the lot. So again, if you need 200 feet of shore frontage, you only need 200 feet of lot width on the back line.
I'm trying to think how many lots you would lose if it's 200 at the shore and 400 at the road. I mean, every lot's going to be shaped.
Yeah, it'll be
fine.
shaped.
Yeah, crazy.
So the language that requires that has been deleted and replaced with the proposed language that addresses that issue.
Yeah, makes sense.
And the last change is just a definition of tiny house. Dwelling is 400 square feet or less in floor area, excluding lofts, is a tiny house by definition.
Cool. 20 by 20.
Because Sue created a little bit of a problem with irregular frontage on a lake. Your base is the frontage, you get 100 feet, that means your back.
Yeah, I know.
Could be 50 feet.
Yeah.
I suppose it could go the other way. You're right. It could be sort of like this. Yeah, that could. But that would solve it.
Got to find frontages measured in a straight line from point to point.
Are you going to crawl up and down all the rocks on some of these places that enter?
How do you measure shore frontage?
But typically you measure
Along
the high water line.
Yeah. A lot along high water.
Yeah.
So as you may know, any proposed change to Appendix K requires a public hearing conducted by this board.
Yeah.
So with those changes that you've asked me to make, would you like to go ahead and schedule a public hearing for the next meeting?
Might as well.
Or would you rather me make the changes and bring them back to you for just a second review before you do that?
I don't think we need that second review, would we?
I don't either.
Don't we have to have a hearing on these proposed changes anyway?
Yes, you're going to hold a public hearing on the proposed amendments to Appendix K. As amended after discussions tonight from the board, the changes you asked for, I'll make those changes, and that's what will be advertised for the public hearing.
Because this has already been advertised? Or not?
Well, it was posted with the agenda for the ordinance committee. Just because of the timing, they were meeting before you, but that meeting was canceled, so they haven't had a chance to look at this yet, but now they won't have a chance at all. The full council will be reviewing it.
Full council meets when?
They meet, well, it won't be until June, because your public hearing will be at your June meeting, and then the council will be doing their first reading of the ordinance probably at, well, let's see, their first, probably the first Thursday meeting that they have in June, and then hold their public hearing. They have to hold a public hearing also, which will be probably the second meeting in June, and then they'd act on it then. So I'll schedule the public hearing for the June meeting.
Yep.
Okay.
Cool.
Did you have any other changes you wanted to make to the land use ordinance while we're at it? Anything of interest to the board to address? Okay.
Item 9, any more discussion? Move to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.